Deck building in the Pokemon trading card game is the hardest skill to develop, but it kind of also isn't. And I found a really interesting post on Reddit that I wanted to discuss about the process of deck building and what it really takes to deck build and be good at the Pokemon trading card game. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's head over to Reddit, where this post from user Just the Jewel says, advice for making decks without basing them off of other people's decks. For context, I got into the TCG mainly when Astral Radiance came out. I played a little online but got really lucky with pulls and started playing in person. Since then, I've used many decks over that time. Palkia, Eternatus, Hisuian Zoroark, Regidrago, you name it. I've even come up with what I thought were unique strategies, putting Shiny Arcana Gardevoir with Mewtwo V-Star, pairing Surfing Pikachu with Arceus, using Cinderace with Radiant Eternatus, but never really had to make a deck on my own, despite the fact. In the end, I can't really think for myself or entirely decide what cards are good with other cards, and most of the time my decks will be copies of other decks with only minor stipulations. I would go as far as to say that I really understand the TCG and can adopt or do crazy things in matches at locals that I'm proud of, but despite that, I still can't make a deck on my own without relying on looking at a build of that variation. As someone who really wants to take the TCG to the next level, I need to understand much more and would appreciate any tips or help. And so just kind of this notion, and I've seen other people say this as well, of like, I need to be able to build my own deck from scratch in order to be great at the Pokemon trading card game, because if I look at other people's decks, I'm not as good, or I'm not as original. Like, it's boring to copy other people's decks. It's cheating to copy other people's decks, what have you. There's a weird aversion that people have to copying other people's decks. And I think the reality is that in the Pokemon trading card game, if you want to be good at the trading card game, you don't have to be a great deck builder, right? For the most part, right? There's nothing wrong. Like, first off, there is nothing wrong with copying lists or taking inspiration from lists off a place like Limitless, off of, Japanese places like Pokeka Book and Pokeka Recipe. There's a reason why these decks are the popular decks. These are decks that, based on hundreds, if not thousands of players playing the game and using tournament data from Japan, where the cards are out months earlier, they have determined that these are the good cards. And these cards are popular because they work, and they are, proven to be really good in a tournament environment. And when you look at some of the best players that are playing right now, let's go look at the results of EUic, for example, right? Day 2 final standings, Alex Shmansky versus Tord Reklev. Let's start with Tord's deck. He's playing Gardevoir. This is the first major showing for Gardevoir in a post-rotation format. And yes, Tord did make changes, right? Up until this point, Professor's Research was not a card people were playing in Gardevoir. Penny was not a card people were playing in Gardevoir. Luminion was not a card people were playing in this archetype. But Tord didn't come up with Gardevoir, from scratch. It's not like no one had played this. He just took the Gardevoir template and then tweaked it based on the meta, based on consistency, and based on his personal preferences. And this is what he wanted to play. And he won. And Tord Reklev, and not saying he can't make any original decks, I'm sure he has, and I've stolen some of them too. This was enough to get him second place at EUic. And then the person who won the tournament, Alex Shmansky, is playing Arceus Duraludon. This is an archetype that has done well for well over a year in tournament. Everybody knows this deck. And the only thing they really changed is they put a 1/1 line of Vulpix. And this was a brilliant meta call because Gardevoir can't hit through Vulpix, Miraidon can't hit through Vulpix, and there's a bunch of other meta-relevant decks that have abilities that just can't hit through the Vulpix. But it's not like Alex went and just thought of this whole thing from scratch. This, like 58 of this 60 pretty much existed before Alex came in. And yes, they made some tweaks here. I'm not trying to diminish what Alex did by putting the Vulpix in there, going double Drapion, going all out with the Lost City count. But Alex won EUic based on a well-known template with minor tweaks. Nothing wrong with that. Let's go and look at this other tournament. Yeah, going back the beginning of Silver Tempest, Tord won with Lugia Archeops. Lugia Archeops was a super popular deck at the time. What did Tord do? And like, I don't remember everything that he did different, but the one thing was, like, this was, again, even up to this point, people had been playing Lugia. The big change he made, he just added a 4th copy of Archeops to help with consistency. And he's not the one that came up with Lugia as an archetype. He just kind of tweaked it a bit based on his personal preferences and trying to make the deck as consistent and as efficient as possible. And it worked. And like the actual skill of building a deck from scratch, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I am saying, though, that if you want to be good at playing the Pokemon trading card game, it doesn't necessarily require you to build a deck from scratch. Like, and there for the most part, there's no reason to. If your primary goal is to win, there are thousands of people smashing their heads together on the cards to figure out the best combinations of cards, and you go and pick an archetype that you like to play, and then you tweak some cards here and there based on the meta you're playing against, based on what you think is going to make the deck run the best, and based on your personal preferences. And then that's how you make a winning deck for the most part. Again, I'm not saying don't make your own decks. I am someone who does make my own decks from time to time. I really wanted to play Pikachu VMax. This is not a meta-relevant card. I still took the time to build a deck for Pikachu VMax because I really like Pikachu VMax. And even here, you can see in the back here, that's Arceus. I didn't invent Arceus as an engine. I just, take Arceus and you put Pikachu in there. Zacian. I love the Zacian V-Star card, and I was like, hey, what happens if you put this in Lost Box? And this was we killed it on this stream, and it was a ton of fun to play this deck. And then a few weeks later, Joko Wong makes a couple of not to say I have no idea if they looked at my deck list or not. They take the same archetype. Here's Lost Box. Here's Zacian. They added the Kyogre in here, which probably was definitely the right move, and they get second place at Perth Regionals. So there's definitely like a valid case for being able to tweak decks and understand the cards and how do you make adjustments to come up with some cool stuff. But you definitely don't need to be that mad scientist in order to be good at the Pokemon trading card game. And like one more example here, and I'm not using this to throw shade at Little Dark Fury. I absolutely love his content. I watch his videos every day, and he specializes in like finding these off meta cards and pushing them to the absolute limit. I highly recommend checking out his channel, though I'm guessing most of you already know who this is. But when it comes to tournaments, what decks is he playing? Like, here is his deck from his best placing in tournament. It's Regigigas. And he had Lost Vacuum here to help with some of the matchups, and that's kind of a little different for Regigigas. But still, the Regigigas archetype is one that is well known to be successful in tournament, and you didn't have to recreate the wheel to make a good tournament deck. And then here's another one from Charlotte. It's Eternatus. And again, existing archetype, just put their own spin on it, and got 238 out of over 1,100 players. So I just wanted to say, like, don't put that level of pressure on yourself to become like a master chef at making decks from scratch, because the vast majority of people don't. And for the most part, it's not worth it unless you just really want to make a certain concept work. And in that case, by all means, go for it. But you are not lesser of a player because you are copying deck lists off of Limitless. That is how the vast majority of people are playing. And like, there's no style points for being the person who comes up with the super crazy concept that no one's seen before. Because even if you do, in the event that you do, then that becomes another list on Limitless that other people will just copy, and then there's going to be someone out there like, oh, you're just copying stuff off Limitless. So like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't feel any shame copying lists from other players. The best way to go about it is to take an archetype, you use it as a reference, and then adjust it to your needs. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments. Just wanted to rant about deck building. Don't pressure yourself too much to be a master deck builder. I will say, like, when you look at these lists, understand why the deck construction is what it is. Look at what works, what doesn't, so that when you are either tweaking a deck or building a net new deck, you can understand why these decks are built this way and then build something to counter it. All right, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. Twitch, stick around, but YouTube, we gotta go. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find me over on Twitch at In Third Person, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m., like I am right now. And you can check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I will see you later. Bye-bye.